Hi everyone, it's Jazz, and I wanted to talk about the fact that this month is Suicide Awareness Month. And usually around this time, I usually try to at least very much so. I don't know, I feel like I want to reach out, especially since it is something that I've gone through, and I'm hoping that in a way that it will help someone else. So for me, um, every year in September, it's more about the fact that for me, it's more about healing, specifically because I have had, I've had suicidal thoughts since I was about like as early as like middle school. And I didn't really have the greatest middle school experience because I was kind of that weird kid. And I guess so. I was just unusually happy, apparently. I don't know, but I don't know what, but I was I don't know. People really didn't like me very much. It felt like at the time I didn't have a lot of friends, or any at all, just because I don't know. A lot of people, it was very clique-ish, and I just didn't kind of fit into to a particular mold. And, um, yeah, so it was just I don't know, bullying was kind of like a big thing, cyberbullying. I remember like when I tried to start like different things. I started a YouTube channel back when I was really into fashion, because that was eventually I later on went to fashion school. And I was always talking about all these projects and things that I made where I would reconstruct garments and things like that, which would get on my mom's nerves because I would cut up things that she gave me or she bought for me. Um, yeah, and I don't know, eventually at some point it just got to a point where it's just started weighing on me. I came home and I was in my room a lot, which my parents kind of would make jokes about that. It's like, Jazz, she's going in her woman cave, she's in there. And they're like, oh yeah, but if you walk in there, she'll be like, why are you in my room? I don't know, I'm very particular about my privacy. But yeah, I remember, I used to stay in my room a lot because I didn't have a lot of friends, and I felt like the only person that was there was me. I don't know. And I kind of eventually, over time, got used to just being on my own, and it kind of affected my later on my life. Later on in life, where it got to a point where it was just very depressing, to the point where I just felt like I didn't want to be in the world. And I don't. I remember it was just more of like I felt like it. And I'm just to be completely honest, it's like originally I felt like I didn't that was not originally what I wanted to do, but I felt like no one paid attention to me. I was not well liked. I didn't have any friends. I was very isolated, so I felt like I don't know what else to do. You know, um, I think like seventh grade was like the worst year of my life. It was really really bad. Being that kid where you would put your stuff down at a table, and then you go through the lunch line and you come back and everyone's moved your stuff to the end of the table because no one really wanted to sit with me. I was sitting there, but it was just more of like I was just there, but not really there. I remember like I think a lot of people used to invite me onto like Skype calls, but then I remember one time I went back to the chat because I remember I was seeing if anyone was online, and I just saw all these things about me that just it really hurt. And I remember a friend of mine, one of my best friends at that time, she switched schools because she said that like the click ish, like the click mentality, like the environment, and she just couldn't take it, so she left, and I just felt like I was there. I never felt like I wanted to quit or to leave, because I just feel like that's a lot of change to adjust to, because I was okay with where I was. It was just that the environment, the people around me just kind of really lowered my morale. And throughout life, throughout most of my adult life, it felt like um, I don't know. It just felt like I didn't really have a very high standard, or I didn't have a very high self image. It was more, I felt like, I mean, I eventually through middle school, that was when I really, really started getting into my faith, and I really started finding Christ in that instance. For people who are non believers, I always have to make a disclaimer that this is not about promoting Christianity. This is just basically my story of how of where basically my story. I started reading the Bible a little bit more, and that was kind of my saving grace at that point, because I just felt like I was alone. I went to church, with my family every once in a while, and then there was a period where we just stopped going for a while. I don't remember why. But I ended up, picking up the Bible, and I found myself discovering it on my own. And, eventually, I've always been in church growing up, but it was just more about, that was a really big time where I started discovering Christ on my own. And that was a very big, helpful thing, because I eventually, over time, especially after I had a moment in college where my roommates found me in the bathtub, I remember, like I said, it got to the point where, because of where I was, and I have flashbacks, and even though I wasn't in middle school anymore, I still felt like, I just still felt like that low self-image. And then all these things in my environment were going on, and it just brought back really terrible memories. And then those suicidal thoughts eventually became something that, my chair is moving, became something that eventually, that eventually just got to the point where it's just like, I don't feel like I want to live. Like I said, it wasn't so much as that in my heart, I felt like it wasn't something that I wanted to do. I just felt like, I'm hurting, people don't like me, I'm just trying to be who I am, and just people don't like it. People don't like who I am, and I'm just like, well, I don't want to change who I am, because that's who I felt. Honestly, I love who I am. I just felt like I said, just people didn't really accept me or want me as the way that I was. I had never dated anyone, nor was I ever interested in, I was interested in certain people, but I wouldn't say like anything, that would go along the lines of, a relationship, because I was just never that person. I was just never that person. But, I felt like I wasn't attractive at one point, because I felt like people don't want to talk to me. And part of it was because I was isolating myself, because I was so used to, throughout middle school and then even high school, just being in isolation from my peers. Like, I was there, but no one really wanted me there. And they're just kind of like, she's just here. And I just felt like I wasn't attractive. I stayed home a lot. Like, being a typical Cancer, I never liked to go out, because I felt like people wouldn't really, respect me, or, I wouldn't be treated, I'd be treated like a wallflower. And a lot of times, even in my lifetime, I've actually had to learn that I'm not the problem. And it's like how my dad used to always say, if you can't change the people around you, then maybe you need to change the people around you. So over time, in my recovery process, is realizing that it's not you that's the issue. It's just the people that you're choosing. It's like, because I'm so used to being in this isolated mentality, because like, clique culture in middle school. And then as I got older, I started finding people that treated me that same way that I was so used to. And I realized that just wasn't productive, because it would bring back a lot of bad memories, triggers that led up to, me attempting to commit suicide. And I don't know, like, for me, it's just been where I eventually just felt like that was just something I was just used to. And it got to the point where I just was like, I don't want to be here anymore. Like I said, I loved who I was. I just felt like, like when I was by myself, I loved being by myself. Sometimes I'm too used to being by myself, simply because, it's just like, no one's mean to me. I can be like, as a child, my imagination could just run wild. I would have, like, as a kid, I used to have like imaginary friends, and I could basically create my own world. In that kind of sense. But when I was by myself, I was myself. And, so that was, yeah. I would say, furthermore, I would just say that, I'm very grateful that overall, the whole process, I've kind of, I never got addicted to drugs or anything like that, or I never, became an alcoholic, or, addicted to specific things that were unhealthy. Because I was so isolated and I was by myself, and, as I told you, I eventually started discovering Christ for myself, was that I learned how important it is, even now at 25 years old. It is really important to learn how to be able to sit in your own grief and process it, because a lot of people don't know how to process it. being able to process how you feel, if you're masking, and, there are people who just like to keep themselves busy. I remember when I was in college and, for the first time, and I wasn't as homesick as I probably would have been if I wasn't so busy with schoolwork. So if I had, not had that work, I would have kind of just started missing my parents, but the thing is that that's not always healthy. The best ways to move on or be able to seek healing and be able to, move forward and be productive is sometimes you just have to have those moments where you just cry or you just write stuff out, how you're feeling, I don't know. It's kind of like how, my aunt in Georgia, she gave me this notebook back in, I think it was back when I was in my second or third year in college. I don't remember, but it was a really nice journal, and I didn't want to use it for class notes. So I started writing these letters. It was like, "Dear God." And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not going to be like one of those prayers where it's like, "Oh God, this happened and I'm so happy and I'm full of faith and all this other stuff." No. I was taught that my faith as a follower of Christ is supposed to be an authentic relationship. It's not religion. And I hate when people say "Are you religious?" No, religion to me is more of obligation, whereas having a relationship with Christ, it's more of a spiritual, it's a relationship, just the same way as I have a relationship with my parents, with my friends, and so on and so forth. And I remember I filled up all the pages and I didn't know what I was going to do with them. And then when I was back in California, when I was at church, someone I didn't know who she was. I've never met this person, never spoken to her. I just know that she just goes to church and I see her every once in a while. And we were talking in the courtyard and she's telling me about herself, her background, her kids. And then she says to me out of the blue, "I have no idea why, but I just feel like, God wants me to tell you, like I said, I don't know what this means, but he misses your love letters. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but that's just what I'm supposed to tell you." And I almost cried because I never told anyone about this notebook. And I still have it actually, just to kind of see where my thoughts were at during that time. And I never, I never met this person in my life. Don't know anyone who knows her, other than people at church. And then, like I said, this book was private. Not even my roommates would, I would never write in it when my roommates were home. And to find out oh, God actually misses my love letters. That was a very spiritual encounter for me because I don't know, when it comes to faith, I feel of course, I'm God, I'm supposed to believe, but I have no idea if you exist or not. And so I'm just I'm told that faith is belief in the unseen. So I guess I'll keep going. And it just felt like a really big moving point because it was wow, he's listening to me. And I remember when I was in that bathtub and I was literally just feeling no one, God, why am I here? No one cares about me. No one respects me. I'm literally surrounded by people who just see me as a wallflower, someone that they can use. And then later on, and I remember, that verse in Jeremiah, it was "Jazz, I know the plans I have for you." I'm not making this up. I literally heard that. And that was one of the things that prevented me. It was I wanted to do it, but then it was just spiritual warfare going on. It's "Jazz, please don't do this. This is I literally have these plans for you. I know what you're, God is like a GPS. It's you're driving, you don't know where you're going, but you just know the destination, but you don't know where you're going to go. And God is the GPS saying, no, turn left. Don't go that way, so it's I know where you're going to go. So please don't do this. And then at that time when I was contemplating, my roommates found me. But, my thing is that, from that whole recovery process was that I just needed help. I feel some people might think "Oh, Jazz probably did that to get attention or something." I'm going to be honest with you, probably some people do attempt or, at least, have suicidal thoughts because they are trying to, they do want to get attention. They do want to say, "This is how I feel. I feel like I'm not getting help. No one notices me. I'm that one person that everyone just kind of hangs around when everything's great. But then when I'm going through something, People need attention. I'm going to be honest with you. As a human being, we have to have attention. I'm going to tell you, no person, especially if you're in a romantic relationship or a friendship, and this person, and you're in a, or if you're married to someone and they don't pay you any mind, they don't tell you they love you, or they don't touch you, they don't, whatever, human beings, we need attention. That's the reason why when babies are born, you need that skin to skin contact, because they need to have that attention, because they can't survive without it. They can't survive without you. So, I would just say that, when you look at the people in your life, and especially if you really care about them, ask them every once in a while what's going on, especially if you notice really weird behavior, or they just seem really like they're going through something. And I feel like for me, as a just as a person, I feel like it's a privilege when I have friends who can come to me, or they can open up about things that are low points. Because I remember when I took a Bible study course on the book of Lamentations, and of course that book is about grief, because it's in the title. But it really, when we talked about what we talked about throughout those 5 weeks, is that how important it is. And I think in the second week, about having someone who can just listen. You don't need to offer advice or anything like that. People just hey, how's it going? People have tendencies to want to say, oh, everything's going great. It's great. Social rhetoric. Hi, how are you? I'm fine. I hate that so much. The script, it's do you really care about how I'm doing? When I was in Germany, that was the one thing they said, I know you guys do that for small talk in America. They said, but when you ask someone how are you, they're going to tell you how they're doing. So, really, when you say that, and I have to think about it, when you say, how are you, think about it. Do you actually want to know how this person is doing? Especially if they're not doing well. I feel like, especially with my faith, is that, God's always there. He's always, it's when you pray and you're like, oh, I have so much faith, and, yeah, I'm going through this, but I'm going to be okay. And God's sitting there no, you're not okay. Why are you trying to tell me this? I'm literally watching you every second of the day since you're born. Why are you lying to me? So, and, I know in my case, sometimes it's hard to express. I'm a very difficult person when it comes to expressing painful things, because I'm not used to people caring sometimes, outside of parents and whatnot. I'm not very good at expressing myself in terms of negative things. I'm how do I explain this without trying to look like I'm trying to, be a person who just wants attention. But it's at the same time, I'm gonna be honest with you. Yes, everyone needs attention. We need to stop we need to stop having that mentality. Yes, people need attention. It's part of life. So, my thing is that in sharing my story and how I feel, is I hope that this month, it's not just, honestly, with September, yes, it's Suicide Awareness Month, but I don't think that it should just stay in this month that we're helping people, or at least talking about it. I think it should be something that is a daily practice, especially, with people that are around you. Sometimes if you need help, there are resources. There are plenty of resources to help you, being able, especially if you're like me, where you're so used to being around people who may not treat you a certain way. All I can just say is, the same thing as my dad says, if you can't change the people around you, change the people around you, because it will help your morale. When I got to college, it was so weird being around people who were who weren't oh, Jazz, you laugh too much. Because I don't know, I think everything's funny sometimes, and it's oh yeah, I love Jazz, I love how you always laugh at stuff. I can know that if I tell a bad joke, at least one person will laugh, and I'm oh, you actually like that? You actually enjoy that about me? So it was so weird, having that. And I remember a roommate, right after I got out of college, I was staying in a co-living space, and one of my roommates says, yeah, so Jazz, because we're gonna do this, and we're friends, right? And I said, we're friends? She's what do you mean? You didn't think we were friends? I'm I don't know. I thought we were friendly, and we'd hang out and do things, and we talk about stuff. And she's Jazz, that's basically what a friend is. It's I think you've had a lot of friends in your life, and you just didn't know it because you're so used to being a certain way. So yeah, so my biggest thing has just been, of course, like in that instance, I was forced to get help because of that incident that it happened in student housing. And I, of course, had to prove that, that I was well enough to go back to class, actually. And it turns out I really enjoyed therapy. Even after I've met my requirements, I still go back to therapy every once in a while, just because it's just helpful to have someone to help you process different things. And I feel like I'm okay. I wouldn't say like, I'm 100% healed, because every once in a while, sometimes things come back up, like thoughts come back up that may not be healthy. But like I said, the thing is that processing it. And then of course, being more social, because part of the problem is I was so isolated because of the fact that, I wasn't putting myself in healthy environments where I was able to thrive and be social, versus being around people who just made me want to be isolated. I was so isolated to the point where I was just like, I just want to be isolated, and I remember I was at a pizza place with some girls that I knew who lived at the co-living space that I was at. And I remember trying to talk and be a part of the conversation, and I was just completely ignored. Like when you try to say a sentence and it's like you're cut off because someone else has something more important to say, or I just felt like I was so invisible and I just had to leave. So when you get into situations like that, learning to leave, because sometimes that can help, that can really make you feel like you're, like that can really lower your self-image. Even in my dating life, which, not to go into too many details, but that really affected me, where it's like, oh, like I remember, being with someone who's like, oh yeah, Jazz, you're so beautiful. And I'm like, really? Like, what are you talking about? And it's like, and I remember he's like, okay, you're going to say this 3 times. You're going to say, I am beautiful. And I was like, this is so ridiculous. I don't want to do this. And he's like, yeah, because like, it's true. But I couldn't believe it because I wasn't around people that made me feel that way outside of my family. But in my dating life, it just wasn't there. So all in all, like I would just say, it's just, like I said, protect your self-image, having you don't have to be like overly confident about everything, like, a narcissist, but at the same time, having a sense of self-respect. I remember especially like as I've, gone further in, my Bible reading and, like trying to walk out my faith specifically, is like, I look at the Proverbs 31 woman, which is like the virtuous woman, or some translations refer to it as, the good wife. And I remember the first line in Proverbs 31 verse 10, it says, a virtuous woman. I may be paraphrasing, so I'm going to actually put the scriptures down below if you want to like read that for yourself. But basically says, a virtuous woman, whom can one find? Her price is far greater than rubies. So the thing about it is, if you want to consider yourself a virtuous person, remember your value is worth more than rubies. So I say that especially for women, because we have this tendency to feel like, we have tendencies to feel like, like we have, where our value is based on, our social circle or our circumstances or who we're in a relationship with. And our value is in itself alone. It says so in scripture. Obviously, if you don't believe in Christ, or, if you are of a different faith, that does not mean that, I'm trying to push this on you. It just means that just so you understand where my perspective is coming from. So that is my price alone. I am worth more than rubies, so, and anyone around you. And especially, and one of the things that I love in that, further on in that passage, it says, that her husband is respected at the gate of the elders. And it's like basically saying, but, and when you think about it, of course it talks about husband and marriage, but the real sense of it, I take it as the people she associates with are respected, has a very good reputation. So when I think about it, is that the people you associate with, that is a reflection of you. So, for people who are out there who may have suicidal thoughts, know someone who has gone through suicide, whether you've lost someone or, whether you've lost someone or whether, you have someone that who has recovered or is in the recovering process, I will just say, as living proof that God knows the plan, he has plans for you to prosper you, not to harm you. So remember that verse, because that verse saved my life, actually. So the verse saved my life. So I have no problem telling people about that, sharing my story, because you never really know, especially like through faith and through, our experiences, is that, like, again, faith, scripture, and from my perspective, it saves lives. And so, just remind people, especially, if your loved ones, remind them of their value. um, you know, you know, be that person that just gives them attention. Life is not just a bed of roses, rose-colored sunglasses. Everybody has down points. That's the point. That's the point of life. We go through ups and downs. Give us our daily bread. Sometimes our daily bread is, correction. Sometimes our daily bread is comfort. You really don't know. So, I'm going to sign off, but I hope that this helps you in any way, and hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye.